Hey garden friends, thanks for taking a little bit of time away from your garden to visit mine. We've got a lot to do today. We're going to have so much fun. We're planting containers, and I'm taking all these plants that I've kept limping along, hold on there, limping along in the windowsill where my wife can't see the bird feeder. Now I'm getting them out into the garden. I'm going to use them for my containers. We've got a great garden tour, and we're going to re-look at a beautiful accident in the garden, so come with me. Well, first off, look at where the hostas are growing. Inside the fence. This is deer candy, and the only place I can grow hostas are inside the vegetable garden. In fact, my vegetable garden is filled almost with more flowers now than vegetables, just to keep them safe from the deer. But one of our last shows last year, we planted 3 clematis that we got really cheap in big containers, like 2-gallon containers, and they're just starting to bloom now. Now, clematis takes a couple years to establish those roots, but hey, this HF Young, it already has some really pretty flowers, and there's some that are growing up here. It's going to be quite a show. Well, this is a polemonium, which is Jacob's ladder, called Heaven Sent, and it's a great perennial, deer resistant, has these pretty purplish flowers, and they smell like heaven. Just a great plant. I've got it growing in a container here, but as soon as it's done blooming, I got to get it out into the garden somewhere. We talked about succession planting with tomatoes, but it's also critical with lettuce. This lettuce is not going to be here at the end of the summer when our tomatoes are ready. So actually in my garden, I'm planting about every 2 weeks some lettuce seeds so that I have a continual harvest. What's going to happen here is this plant is going to get warm, it's going to bolt, which means go to seed, and it's going to be done. We'll get a couple harvests out of it, maybe 3 harvests out of it once it gets going. And then behind me, I've been experimenting with growing garlic in containers, and it's filled with something called pit moss, P-I-T-T, not peat moss. And we're going to be featuring them on an upcoming show, but I love this stuff, pit moss. It's made out of recycled newspaper. It uses 2/3 less water, which makes it perfect for containers, but we'll talk about that in an upcoming show. Let's continue the tour. Well, speaking of the deer, this plant they have no interest in. It's a great shade-loving perennial called Aurelia. This one's called Sun King. And look at that amazing chartreuse foliage. It does have some insignificant flowers, but mostly grown for the leaves. And once these things get established, they just come back year after year and just look beautiful. And as I said, the deer don't touch them, thank goodness. This is Camassia, grown from a fall planted bulb, and not too happy here in the shade, but still blooming, and another thing that it's been deer resistant. So Grandma says you got to start your peas on St. Patrick's Day, and that's what we did both in the garden and in containers. I'd never grown peas in containers, but I wanted something that stayed small. This is Patio Pride Snap Pea from Kitchen Garden Seeds. It just, gets about 1.5 feet tall. It's filled with blossoms, starting to put peas on, which is exciting. And if we pick them early, you get kind of a snow pea, but if you wait, you'll have shell peas. I'm probably going to pick them early because I love these snow peas. And then there's one over here that I love just for its snow peas called Shiraz Purple Snow. And look at these flowers. First, we'll get these nice purple flowers and then purple peas. And this one lasts a lot longer in the garden than most. It's going to go all the way into the end of June. One of my favorite shrubs, and it's funny, I got like 5 of these, and they literally fell off the truck at a nursery, and I bought them cheap. This is the only one that survived, and it's a mountain laurel called Nip Muck. And what's amazing about it is this is the time when it is in its peak, right before it blooms, which is cool. The buds are actually more spectacular than the flowers. And even though mountain laurel is poisonous to the deer, young ones don't know any better, and they will come and they will nibble on the buds, which I learned years ago. Either a physical barrier around this, sometimes I cover it with deer netting, but mostly I'm just spraying with my deer repellent, Bob-X, and we'll be talking a lot about Bob-X over the next few weeks. But boy, I just love this thing, and I'm glad I'm here to see it bloom. One of the wonders of this property when we came to look at it 20-some years ago were the giant rhododendrons. And look at the size of this thing. I mean, that's got to be 20 feet tall, and just every spring we get these beautiful blooms of all different colors. There's another plant that was here when we moved in that I always bring inside to put in a vase. There's nothing like the beauty and fragrance of these old-fashioned peonies. I just love them. I should get some newer varieties to put in here, but maybe this year. Everything that we've looked at is basically maintenance free and just does its thing. And that's one of the best things about growing some of these plants. Not everything will overwhelm you. These just do their thing, which I'm grateful for. Well, I wanted to revisit this happy accident with these daffodils. I'm having second thoughts. Daffodils should not be blooming this time of the year. Now, this happy accident happened. I didn't get to plant my bulbs, all of them. I planted about 1,000. And I had a box of these sitting in my office. They weren't even getting a cold treatment, which they should have been in the garage. I didn't even think of that. And I planted this batch right here in March when daffodils are starting to bloom, not knowing what would happen. And you see what happened. They're blooming later. So at first I'm thinking, wow, this will be a great way to extend the daffodil season. Now I'm thinking it's weird to have daffodils this time of the year. I actually have a vase inside filled with daffodils and peonies. Those two things, at least in this garden, never are blooming at the same time. So I'm going to rethink this. I was thinking that next year I would hold some back and I would plant them later. But there's something about that spring daffodil bloom that's so special, and it just seems weird to have them blooming now. What do you think? I'm not sure what to do, but I've been asking people on Facebook, so for now I'm just going to pick them, bring them in, and put them in a vase. They're still beautiful. One of the joys in my garden is planting containers. I really love my containers. I probably have 40 throughout the property, even though you've seen that 30 by 40 vegetable garden there and all this woodlands. I'm still looking for more places to grow plants. And with containers, bigger is always better. That means less watering. More mass is less watering. I always say that containers are such a great idea in the spring when there's lots of rain, but then when we get to July, it's the worst idea in the world because you're watering every day. So go with a bigger container. And there's a formula I learned a long time ago. It's called the thriller. That's this one, the big one in the middle. Then a filler, and then a spiller. And so my wife is so glad to get this thing out of the house. I have nursed this red banana plant along all winter long, and boy, it's tough as nails because it's gone 2 weeks without water. And so this is going to be my thriller. And nothing to this. You know, people often ask me with these containers, do you change out all the dirt every time? And I say, no. I take out about the top quarter, sometimes a third, and add fresh material in there. But that, I tell you what, when this thing gets going, it's going to be a monster. Okay, so your thriller's in place. This thing's going to be amazing. And then I've got 2 new plants, and I have to read them off the plant ID markers here. These are from a company called Doom and Orange. They sent them to me. The one is a fuchsia called Ballerinas Brisée, and I looked that up on how to pronounce that. The other one is a begonia Eliter Move to Joy in Salmon. So what we have to remember with our containers, just like any place else in the garden, right plant, right place. And so banana is a shade plant, the begonia is a shade plant, and the fuchsia is a shade plant. And I love trying out these new plants. I really have had trouble growing fuchsia in the past, so I'm hoping these new ones will do the trick for me. We're just going to add a little bit of soil in here and put our filler in. I only have 2 of these begonias, but it's okay. We're going to kind of cheat it towards the front because we can't see it from the back. And the other one. So these will be salmon with this kind of purplish green and then kind of a pinkish. Is that going to go together? I hope so. And now the fuchsias. I'm going to put a little bit more soil up there. That's better. And the fuchsias. And your spiller just kind of softens up the edge as it grows out there. We're going to do a lot of work with containers over the next couple weeks. Hanging baskets and all sorts of other stuff. And this is going to look nice, I think, anyway. Now the next thing is watering them in, but with containers, I learned a long time ago from my friend Frank Peasy, who used to do all the horticulture work at the zoo, and I said, man, how do you get those containers looking so good? And he's just like, every time we water, we fertilize. And so that's what we're going to do here. This is the fertilizer that I love. It's called Dramatic with 2 M's. That's from a company called Dram. It's fish-based. I've been using it forever, and I can't tell you how great it is. It makes, especially containers, boy, it makes everything look so good. And so I've mixed them up. This is a concentrate. It's like $20 for a bottle, and the 2 bottles will probably last you all season. It's just a great fish-based fertilizer, but when you apply it, it's going to smell like low tide. And so there, we'll do that. Water these in. And never let your containers dry out. And again, Frank taught me, you've got 10 different water indicators right here. You just stick it down here. If it's moist down there, you don't need water. If it's dry, put some water on. Well, what do you think? I think it's going to look pretty good. I can't wait to see how it does this summer. Now it's time for Talking Trees from the Davey Tree Expert Company. I'm joined again by Rob Kruljac. He's an assistant district manager for the Davey Tree Expert Company in the North Pittsburgh office. And Rob, it seemed like such a good idea 20-some years ago to come and live in the woods and have all these indestructible hemlocks here.
Right.
But in your travels, you've spotted some problems for me.
Yes, it's our not our friend, but the pest, the hemlock woolly adelgid, which is actually a sucking aphid-like insect that does a lot of damage to our hemlock trees.
So with only 60 hemlock trees on the property, right. So what are you thinking?
Pick your favorites, treat those, and maybe let the others, decline naturally.
So anywhere I can reach it, when I see it, I'm spraying horticultural oil on it.
Correct. Yes, spring, summer, and fall.
But a 40-foot tree, that's not going to work.
Correct. We can provide a product where we actually spray a product on the bark of the tree that the tree absorbs through it and then goes out through the needles and kills the insect, both the hemlock woolly adelgid and the elongate hemlock scale from the inside out.
And I, of course, have both.
Yes, right. Yeah. Where you find one, you'll typically find
the other. Last week we had an oak tree just about to fall on the garage. Now we've got 60 trees to treat.
Right.
I am keeping Davey in business.
Yes. Thank you. We need the work.
So how long has this been around? Has it been around for a long time, or is it
no, a more recent pest? I mean, it hasn't been in Pennsylvania quite as long as where it originated, but we are seeing it more and more common. The good news is it is easy to control. So it's a oil, horticultural oil. It's not a very toxic product at all. It's an oil, so we can control it easily.
So it's pretty easy too to tell if your tree has it, right?
Yeah, when it's a bad infestation, you'll think it snowed in the middle of June, July. It's that white on the trees, so it's pretty easy to notice. And also, if you notice like the density of the needles in your hemlocks just looking thinner and thinner, that's also another sign that there's probably something going on there.
Will be all through the tree, or would it start at the bottom, or we don't? It could be anywhere.
It could be anywhere.
All right.
Yep. But low branches, it's very noticeable. The white contrast against the dark green needles gives it away pretty easily. Well,
more good news, but again, I'm glad you were here to take a look and see what was going on so that we can save them until, if I didn't know any better, it would just be like, oh no. One thing I have noticed, when we have that real cold spell, it knocks it back pretty good.
Yes.
So that helps a little bit.
Right. We've lost some blooms, but we also hurt some insects.
With that treatment, would fertilizer also be something I should think about for this trees or not?
You could, but then we have to worry about mites. Fertilizer, how they react to the mites react to it. So we have to look at the whole picture and then formulate a plan based on what we see.
Well, as always, thank you very much. I'm going to try
Anytime.
it. Just take it easy on me.
There you go.
Right? Now, that's the way you shake hands, okay?
Yes.
When you're a manly man and you're talking to somebody like this with these soft hands, that's how you shake hands.
Got it. Duly noted.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I sure appreciate it. Now, until next week, keep planting, and we'll see you then.